Hi, my name is Louise Larson. I run August Consulting and I help families on the road to college. This is my April webinar. I'm recording it on March 31st. So I will start with news and notes and then take a deeper dive into why this process is so complicated. So let's get started with yes, I am recording. Okay, good. So I'm going to start with this quote, and this is from Albert Einstein, and he says, "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." And I say that because it's March 31st. The bulk of all colleges have released their decisions. There's a few April 1st straggler schools that, we're still waiting for some answers from some schools, but by and large, the answers are out. And there's still a lot of unpredictability, a lot of waitlist activity. My takeaway from this year would be, the adage, go big or go home, is now go early decision or go home. Just saw a lot of, just movement around that was interesting. And an example of that is Vanderbilt University had a 13% early decision admit rate. So that's pretty selective in the early decision round. But their regular decision round was 3% this year. So when you start thinking that they're taking 100 kids and maybe sending 20 home and saying these kids just didn't quite, they're not they don't meet our academic threshold. You have 80 kids, 80 rock stars, and they're picking three. So that's kind of a sobering number. So there's every school's put out all sorts of data on tight admit rates, and I'm not going to focus on that because what does it do but just increase anxiety? I mean, we know a lot of these schools are very selective. Some of them are very selective, regular decision versus early decision. Some of the public state schools are very, very selective if you're an out-of-state student, 5, 6, 7%. So that doesn't solve anything, me sitting here just sharing data to make you stressed. Just know that it continues to be, some pretty tight margins on some of these schools. If you are a parent of a senior, and the May 1st deadline is coming, so that's about 30 days away now at this point. If for some reason you need an extension, I think about students who've been in a natural disaster, maybe some of those students in California and the Palisades area, maybe they just can't quite put their decision together in the next 30 days, or maybe you have a personal issue going on that is impinging on your ability to go make a final decision. You can certainly ask for an extension. Get it in writing. If you give them some context, most schools will try to accommodate you and say, sure, we can give you 2 more weeks, whatever it might be. If you are on a wait list, it is critical to to send a deposit into a school that has admitted you. Wait lists are notoriously unpredictable. I'm going to actually put a wait list of something about how to negotiate and manage wait list activity on my blog later this week. But I will share some data. I had a student that was waitlisted at Clemson, and I said, okay, let's go look at the past year's data. So last year they offered the waitlist to thousands of students, and about half the students, but it's still thousands, accept the spot on the waitlist. So last year they accepted 111 students off the thousands of students waiting. And that was 2024. In 2023, similar numbers for students accepting spots on the wait list. They admitted 1,100. In 2022, they admitted same types of numbers, 1,000. And in 2021, same types of numbers in that waitlist pool, they admitted 11. So I said to this student, so I don't know. If they take 11, you probably don't have a chance. If they take 1,100, maybe you have a chance. And I share those numbers to say that's not unusual to see really erratic numbers around waitlists from year to year. So you can certainly pursue the wait list, but you need to kind of get on board with one of the schools that has admitted you because there's a very good chance you might be going there. All right. So just in the news, this woman, Charlie Javis, founded a company in 2016 called Frank to help families fill out the FAFSA. And she sold it to JP Morgan for like $175 million, claiming that she had like millions and millions of email addresses. And JP Morgan saw it as a bill as an avenue to maybe solicit these email addresses for bank accounts. So they bought this, and it turned out she only had like 300,000 or 400,000 email addresses. And so she, committed fraud again around college admission stuff. And she, I guess, is facing some pretty significant jail time. It is March Madness, which is always a lot of fun. And I always pick my bracket by how much I like the college's admissions policies, like how they handle their admissions. And some, I don't know anything about some of the schools. I don't know anything about Texas Tech's admissions. So sometimes I'm kind of shooting blind. But the winner of my bracket for me that I kind of and I'm human. I did look at some of the rankings and how they did, but I picked Kentucky, and Kentucky is no longer in it. But Kentucky, I really love that school. I mean, they've got fun sports, they've got a beautiful campus, they've got amazing freshman housing. You can get in. And so I have a soft spot for Kentucky. I was hoping they would win. But then if they had won, you wouldn't be able to get in anymore. So I don't know. I am currently reading A Problem of Fit: How the Complexity of College Pricing Hurts Students and Universities by Philip Levine. And this book, the first time I went to order it a year or two was $150. I went to get it in my bookstore. River Road Books called me up like, do you really want this book for $150? And I was like, well, I don't know. But then I decided I really needed to have it price or not. And then when I went to get it this time, it was, it's paperback. It's not $150. I don't know what it was, but it was not a lot. Anyway, I saw this guy on some sort of live presentation, and he had me right out of the gate because he said, I have a PhD in economics from Princeton, and I am a full economics professor at Wellesley College. And when my children were facing going to college, I couldn't figure it out. I could not figure out, I knew I made a good living, but I didn't know if I would get any aid, and I didn't know if I could afford to pay the whole thing. And he was flummoxed, and he wrote this book, and he actually started a like a nonprofit thing called My Intuition for families to try to go in and sort out what they would be required to pay. And he talks about his own experience. He was like, okay, if the average person doesn't pay the full price, what does the average person pay? And how, but more importantly, what do you expect me to pay? And, I love this line. He said, for each family, the price should be understandable, known, and affordable. And I was like, yes. So anyway, so far it's very good. I recommended last time, I said that I had read this book, Burdened, which is interesting, but not as directly helpful to a parent. I think still The Debt Trap is the way to go, but I think Phil Levine's book might be, right up neck and neck with this, or we'll see. So anyway, so that's what I'm reading. I will tell on myself. I shared in past webinars that I've been shepherding one of my kids through law school. And I've made every mistake in the book. And I've done everything that I tell parents not to do. And I couldn't, we had a private consultant working with us that I could not wait to get with her for her to tell me what was going on because I didn't understand anything. And so this student of mine, my child, deferred last year, decided to take a year off, deferred from one school, threw out a few more applications, and now it's time to decide because he is planning to go in August. So my husband took him down to one law school that he had never been to, and a couple days later, I was taking him to like this big, long admitted students day at a school that we did visit last year. So I will tell you, I was, we pull off the highway and we're still a mile from the campus. So we're off the highway, but we're approaching the campus. And I had to bite my tongue. I wanted to say to him, so what do you like better? Do you like the one you saw with Dad last Tuesday, or do you like this one? Which one do you like better? Like, he wasn't even on the campus yet, and he hadn't been there. He'd been there once a year ago. So, and I had to like check myself. I was like, you know, not to ask that. Like, why are you asking? Why are you even thinking to ask that? And I didn't. So then, in this long, drawn out thing, and this day, I shouldn't say drawn out, just a kind of a long day of events at this law school. And halfway through it, I'm like, well, we've been on campus for half the time. Now I can ask him. And I was like, don't do it. Like, and these two sides sitting in my shoulder, like the side that knows what not to do, and this reflexive parenting thing that was just wanted to ask him. And then we left around 6 o'clock, and it was a 3 or 4 hour drive home. And around 10 o'clock at night, I was like, well, we left campus 4 hours ago. Now I can ask him what he thinks. And I was like, it's 10 o'clock at night and we're on a highway. Leave him alone. And sure enough, in the next day or two, he came along and gave us his opinions. But I'm sharing that to just say it's so hard. I mean, when I was in going to law schools with him, I would answer the dean's questions. Like, I was just like saying we. I was like doing everything that I tell parents not to do. So I share that to just say it is hard to pull yourself in, and even when you know what to do. So here's another little fun fact I found. So 529 accounts that have surplus funds in them can be rolled into Roth IRAs if they have been in the account for 15 years. You can put up to $10,000 annually into a Roth IRA, and that's capped at a total of 35,000. Now, if you are fortunate enough to have enough money in your children's 529 account and that you have surplus funds, this is a very interesting option to do with that money. You might have a fair amount of money saved and your child ends up at a school that costs less or gets a scholarship, or who knows. So I thought that was an interesting thing. Now I will shift gears to the College Board. The College Board had the March 8th SAT that had worldwide glitches that were disastrous. And one of the things that was happening was something was set wrong, and at 11 o'clock, the SAT just self-submitted and students didn't have any choice. So that was one of the problems. So, it leaves me shaking my head. They're trying to, find some workarounds for this. The one thing is, if you did take that test, you should not cancel your scores. You should see what you do get back. The College Board has also offered, they always, traditionally in the past, in the fall, the College Board had testing for the SAT October, November, December. A couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, they started to add August, which if you're in the Northeast is hard because not so many schools offer it. They're just not open yet and ready for that. But they have decided to add a September date. So that will be an option to take the SAT August, September, October, November, and December of your senior year. Ohio State University came out since my last webinar and said they're requiring test scores. Now, this is interesting. This is a really big school. And they, I don't know. It certainly made me sit up and take notice that a big state flagship is requiring test scores. Up until now, it's been like, MIT, Dartmouth, some of the Ivies, other schools have come along and said, we're going to require test scores. But this is a pretty big flagship to do that. Dartmouth, who required scores this year, actually saw their applications drop. They had 31,657 applicants last year. This year they had 28,230. So that's an 11% drop. Now, make no mistake, it's still really hard to get to Dartmouth, but I thought it was interesting that they did have a drop. In the testing world, the ACT is in the process of rolling out their online testing. They're going to make the science section optional. Now, if you say to me, well, should my kid take the science section or not? I say probably yes. Georgia Tech has come out and said that the science section is optional. But nobody else is clear if it's optional or not. I think that probably while the schools sort this out until we have more information, it makes sense to take the ACT with the science, for my 2 cents. And now we come to the next bit of news, which might not seem like a big deal to you, but it's a really big deal to me. and people in this world because one of the last holdouts to have their own application, one of the last, I mean, Rutgers has gone onto the Common App. Tennessee, I'm not Tennessee, Texas, Austin's gone onto the Common App. Finally, Georgetown's gone onto the Common App. Now, this is a big deal for a couple reasons. Um, First of all, it will make Georgetown no doubt more selective next year. Rutgers, over 2 years, they went from 40,000 applications on their second year on the Common App. They went well over 70,000 applications. So Georgetown's going to get more applications for sure. Um, but the other thing about Georgetown, and I hope they give this up too, they're one of the only schools that requires that you send all your scores. And this is hard. Like kids, testing is already complex, making decisions around it. And a lot of kids say, I took the March and May SAT, but now my school's offering a school day SAT and they want me to take it. Is there any downside to taking it? And the downside is that if you want to apply to Georgetown, they require every SAT and every ACT you send. So if you just decide to sit for your school's SAT and it doesn't go well, you still have to send that score. So I hope they give that up because I don't know what it's showing them. I mean, um, but while I'm kind of calling Georgetown out, I will tell you, this is a very good school. It's a fine institution, but how they do their admissions is really, with their own application, and the way their own application worked was you had to pay to get the application. Now you might say, well, what do you mean? If you can fill out the Common App for 20 schools, but you only pay when you send in the application to that school. So you could fill it out for 20 different schools and decide I'm only going to apply to 5 and send it to those 5, and you only pay for those 5. Georgetown makes you pay to get into the application, which seems entirely unnecessary and kind of a barrier for kids. So I think that stinks. The other thing about Georgetown is they will not let anybody tour their campus they'll let school counselors tour their campus and they'll let families tour their campus, but nobody else. So when my youngest wanted to go see some DC schools, I was like, we're going to Georgetown because I'll never be able to tour it any other way. And we get there on a blazing hot August day. They have no parking. And I kind of looked around. I'm like, they could probably designate some of their parking admissions only. So you're like parking in this neighborhood and trying to stuff your car into this little tiny spot. And I'm like, they could have parking. Like I see parking. And then you go we went in for a 2 o'clock tour at 10 of 2, and this just completely indifferent, probably a student was just like, can I help you? And my daughter was like, we're here for the 2 o'clock tour. And they were like, you can wait outside where it was like 110 degrees. But the worst thing that Georgetown did was that year, my daughter opted not to apply. She just, didn't really care for it that much and didn't apply. And she was a strong student and she had a nice profile. And they started to email her over December. We think you're what we're looking for. We think you have the type of profile. We are hoping you apply. And I was disgusted because they were just listening her application. I knew that she'd get a good look, but I didn't think she was going to get in. And they solicited her. And I knew not to do anything about it. But if the way these emails came across, a person who is not in this industry would think, Georgetown is recruiting my child. They are recruiting applications for selectivity. And I was really kind of turned off by it. So anyway, that's my, story about Georgetown and get it going on the Common App. So one of the things we are seeing is, and I forget if it was Harvard or Cornell or Stanford, but in the past month, Harvard, Cornell, and Stanford have all put in hiring freezes. And then Hopkins went up one up them, and actually is having layoffs. So about 5 years ago, Stanford made an announcement that they were going to eliminate a whole bunch of athletic teams. And there was a very open, detailed email laying out the types of deficits that they were running on these programs, how meaningful they were for the school, how they had to make some changes, how it was not sustainable. Because you think, oh, Stanford, how could they not afford to run a team? Well, when you read this email, you were like, okay, maybe there's something here. So when I see these really, really well, I mean, these are some of the most highly resourced schools in the country, having hiring freezes or cuts, I go, whoa. And the NIH graduate school federal funding was cut, and students who were like admitted to grad schools had their applications rescinded, their acceptances rescinded. So, that's what University of Pennsylvania did. They have pretty deep pockets. University of Pittsburgh also is facing some severe cuts. They don't have the type of deep pockets that Penn has. So this is just me sitting here, but I can't imagine how these cuts aren't going to trickle down into the undergraduate world in some way. I don't know how. We'll wait, we'll watch, but I can't imagine that it won't. Um, I think that this is really going to favor full pay families. The other thing that, so many state schools are functioning because of their budget cuts over the years. They're functioning more like de facto private schools. So I think that full pay families will be in demand next year because here's the other thing. International students are a big source of funding. Very few colleges offer funding of any financial aid type to international students. So when international students come, they are full pay. So if you think about a college that has a freshman class of 1,000 and their tuition, room, board, and tuition is $90,000, but they give discounts and merit scholarships, maybe the average kid's paying 60,000, so they're bringing in 1,000 kids, $60,000. That's $60 million they bring in revenue. I would say it is not unusual to see, say, 15% of a class at a fairly selective school be international. But the thing about being an international student these days, can you get the student visa? Are you comfortable coming? Are you comfortable with the distance with things going on? They're expecting some of these international students will say, maybe I'm going to do something a little different. So if a school is bringing in 1,000 kids and 150 of them are international and 100 of the international kids don't come and they're bringing $90,000 each, that's $9 million. So all of a sudden they've gone from 60 million in gross, dollars coming in from their freshman class to 51 million. It's pretty hard to make that up. So I think that could be a really between the NIH funding and the international students, I think some colleges might have some significant challenges. And then the other piece is, there's discussion of taxing endowments, and they say Harvard is a hedge fund with a little college attached to it. Taxing endowments would really change some of these students, some of these schools' budgets. So that's there's one more little thing I want to share with you. The Common App has announced their prompts are the same from last year and the year before, so the prompts aren't changing. The COVID prompt is actually going to be broader to include challenges and circumstances you might have had to share in context, which is good because a lot of students might have some context to share. The additional information section will drop from 650 words to 300 words. That's fine. But they said it is all, and this made me laugh. I can't say it with a straight face. It is all designed to be more joyful. I was like, all right, great. A more joyful Common App. I can't wait. I hope it is. I hope they're right. I hope it's more joyful. So that is news and notes. So now I want to talk about why this is so complicated. And I was talking to a friend today whose oldest finished high school in 2017 and her youngest is a class of 2026. So she was like, I'm going on to University of Michigan. I was like, why? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got a kid going to college. Like, so anyway, I forgot that she had this younger kid. I mean, I didn't forget, but so why is this so complicated? And she was saying it's a totally different thing, totally different than what it was in 2017. Um, so, I was on a webinar with a dean of a very selective school, and they said, to apply to college should not be so demanding. Students should be able to approach this with ease. It's been made inaccessible. It's a brand new process. They've never done it. It's loaded with loopholes, barriers, and lack of clarity from the colleges, the testing entities, and the technological platforms. And that is true. So the first thing that is challenging is gauging your list. Figuring out what you like and, starting to build a list, but starting to gauge, are these schools realistic for me? That's a really hard thing to do. And it is harder. You used to say, find some couple of targets, a couple of reaches, a couple of likelies. The targets are harder and harder. And I have more kids coming in with like maybe 5 likelies and 5 reaches. And that's where we are. So it's harder to gauge those lists and determine, what is this school for me? Where do I fit into the context? So gauging your list, harder. The Common App is, I agree. I know the Common App is better than maybe doing 20 individual applications, but the Common App is not so common. By the time you fill out your basic information, your high school, your family information, your activities, and your essay, great. But then you have to go school by school and answer a whole slew of questions. I mean, I think it was Tennessee last year. I think it was Tennessee, asked like 20 questions about your family's relationship to Tennessee agriculture. I mean, one school, I think it was Kentucky, asked you had to put down your cell phone carrier. And like a lot of kids are like, I'm not sure who my cell phone carrier is. I mean, it is question after question. It's a whole nother thing that you have to do because you think, oh, it's common. But then once you've answered all the individual college questions, then a lot of them have supplemental writing pieces, and some of them have more than one. And look, I love Syracuse. I think Syracuse is a great school. They've got a lot of really neat stuff going on there. But their essay prompt is 250 words. Why do you want to come here? And how do you contribute to an equitable community where you live? In 250 words. I mean, that's really hard to do. So some of the prompts are really challenging. So the Common App, you think, great, I get the Common App done, but there's a lot more to getting it done than just, the actual main piece. Um, One of the challenges is testing is so vague. Now it's clearer in some places where you have to submit scores. And honestly, in some ways, I welcome that because it's just clearer. Like, you know what? You're a rock star, you've got a 4.8, you're taking BC calculus, and you have an 1100 in your SAT, and that just means MIT is probably not realistic. So some of that clarity is actually really good, but there's a whole lot of vagueness. Are they test free? Are they test required? Are they test preferred? Will they take a super score? Will they score from the old SAT to the new SAT, the old ACT to the new ACT? Are they science optional for the ACT? Um, it's just, and it's very easy for some kids because the scores are so high or so low that you just have clarity. But those kids that are kind of in the middle with maybe like one scores really high and one scores not as high, like a 750 and a 550, what do you do with that? Do you send it? Do you not send it? So that is like reading tea leaves to figure out, are we sending those scores? Um, Reporting grades, really challenging. Some schools will take your high school transcript. Some schools make you basically enter your transcript onto the Common App. Some schools make you do what is called the SRAR, the Self-Reported Academic Record, which is an entirely different tech platform that you go in, and instead of like your high school sending your transcript to the college and then somebody there uploading it or doing the data entry, you do the data entry and you put all this in. But even within that, there's some different things that different schools want. And if you don't have it done the way they want it within the SRAR, it won't upload. I mean, 5, 10 years ago, the SRAR was like more of a random thing that you might come across. And now it's all sorts of schools. And you can't even say it's like, oh, it's the public flagships, although many of them do want it. There's private schools, there's small schools, there's big schools, I am always going over that list with like a fine-tooth comb, like, did we miss one? Because, you forget, like, oh, wait, like some little school somewhere requires the SRAR. So, The other thing that's really challenging is as soon as kids submit stuff, colleges have these, not everybody, but a lot of them have these automatic like alerts, like we don't have your transcript. Like, of course you don't have my transcript because I just sent in my application. Like, so they start emailing kids right away about missing stuff, which it gets very stressful when you're getting emails saying your application isn't complete. Kids haven't done this before. They don't know. So um, it's very challenging, these automatic incomplete file notifications. Trying to figure out your application plan. Are you going early decision? Are you going regular decision? Are you going early action? Are you rolling? How do you want to proceed with this school? Um, it is critical. Many high schools have very fixed protocols for doing things, protocols for requesting letters of recommendation, protocols and deadlines for um, transcript requests. You have to know your high school's routines and parameters because some of them are very strict and some of them even cap like how many applications they'll send out. So you need to know your high school's rules. And like I can't even help with that very much because I work with kids from all different high schools. I don't know every high school's protocol. So that's challenging. The application process back in the day, if you are of a certain age, you probably filled out a paper application and you put it in the mail and that was it. There was nothing left to do. You couldn't, you couldn't, you know, couldn't call the admissions office and say, is my file complete? I don't even think that was a thing. But now, the minute you submit an application, you will receive a link to an application portal. And what is challenging with the portals is the process can just go on from there. There were some schools last year, I think it was Colgate and the Common App said there's no supplemental writing. And as soon as you sent in your application, they sent you prompts for supplemental writing. I don't know why they just couldn't put it in the Common App, but the portals are going to give you more directions often. And if you don't do it, you're basically saying, like, I'm not interested in your school. So sometimes they might, if you apply early action, they might defer you and ask you to fill out more application, do more writing, another writing prompt. Um, you can see in there, have your test scores been received? Has your letter rec been received? Has your transcript been received? Is your SRAR properly linked? You can see a lot of information, but a lot of times they're giving you more work to do in there. And if you don't do it, they've just said, okay, this kid's not interested. So that becomes one more thing to manage. Um, money. Understanding your family's ability to pay, understanding, are you doing the FAFSA? Do you qualify for need-based aid? Does your school require the profile? What does that look like? So having an early and honest conversation about how you're going to proceed. Are you filling out the FAFSA? Are you filling out the profile? Um, some families um, are saying, some families say, I'll do the FAFSA, but there's no point in filling out the profile. You're counting home equity, and it doesn't take much in the 2025 real estate market to have a fair amount of home equity that would make you ineligible for aid. So at a profile school. So it's it's complicated. And those are some of the reasons why people call me because there's just a lot to it. Um, the last thing I'll share with this as we think about what this looks like, and as I have juniors ramping up to start application work in the next month or two, is this. I was on a webinar, a mother who she said, I had standard strong kids, and standard strong is an industry expression for kids with high rigor, high grades, good test scores, nice extracurriculars. She's like, my kids were standard strong. And excuse me, my kids were standard strong. And then she became a seasonal reader for a really selective college. And I think what happened was her one kid had already gone through everything. Then she became a reader. And then she had another kid coming up the pipeline. And she said, when I did the reading, I was blown away by what these kids had done. These were not standard strong kids. These were like a whole nother level. So I didn't understand when I first went through why like some of the answers were the way they were, but now I get it because I couldn't have imagined the level of the type of student coming into these application pools. Blew her away. In Forbes, there was an article February 4th that talked about the significant emotional and financial investment of applying to college for students, with 52% of the students finding it more stressful than any other academic challenge and dedicating anywhere from 60 to 200 hours on their applications. So it's a very stressful process for kids, especially because they've never done it. And um, this was from another dean of a very selective school. He said, when he talks about his application pool, he said all of the candidates had something great to bring. Every one of them had some strength that might make this place better, but he couldn't take them all. And I'll wrap up with my Albert Einstein quote: "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." So I'm going to put my waitlist piece up on my blog on August Consulting, and I'll be back next month. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to just reach out.